Hi guys, welcome to Crazy Burger. In this video we're going to be looking at the new carts and specifically Piko Collection for N64 on Evercade for the first time. Let's see how it performs. Okay guys, so let's have a look at Piko Collection 4. We now have 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit and 64-bit games on this cartridge. The first ever 64-bit game on Evercade in the shape of Glover, which is obviously the N64 version. Now that's going to be interesting to see how well it runs on these devices, because generally N64 games don't run that well, especially on relatively sort of underpowered devices, which I would say the EXP definitely is. So it's going to be interesting to see how it performs. I will check it against the original Evercade as well, and also the Super Pocket, just to see if it actually works on those handhelds as well. It is supposed to, so we'll have a quick look. This is cart number 39 that we're on now. And we've got 10 more games from the Piko library. Obviously they've picked up the licensing for these games, and obviously sometimes it is a little bit of a mixed bag. The last collection was kind of okay, wasn't spectacular. Wasn't a big fan of Piko Collection 2, but I did enjoy Piko Collection 1. So will this get back to form? I'm not sure. We've got Glover, Risky Woods, Zero Tolerance, Underground, Skuljagger, Street Racer, Target Renegade, Bad Street Brawler, Mermaids of Atlantis and Star X and the Fidgetts. So let's have a quick look at what's in the box. We've got the cartridge as normal, fantastic looking, and we actually have a poster this time with this collection. I wonder why some sort of collections they decide to include posters and some they don't. Interesting stuff. But this one is obviously a poster for the cover star, which is Glover. Quite cool, I guess. So we've got a nice poster. On the other side we have a Risky Woods poster, which is also quite cool as well. So nice touch. I like that they add these things in. Adds a little bit of value to the collection. So also we get the manual in the box as well, which is massively helpful. Pretty cool. So let's have a quick look at the details. As usual, a little bit about Piko Interactive. They're basically a company from 2013 that has been attaining a lot of old game licensing, which is pretty cool. Then it's easier for Blaze to then get them licensed onto Evercade. Massive section on the cover, starring probably, maybe arguably the best game on the collection. This is Glover, the first ever 64-bit game, N64, and you can see all the different moves that we've got. They've certainly changed a lot of the sort of button mapping, I guess. We're using the L1 and R1 button to rotate the camera, which obviously in the N64 you'd have been using the little yellow camera button, I guess. So hopefully this works well on the D-pad too, because obviously without an analog sticks it definitely makes you wonder how well it's going to perform. So that's going to be interesting. Have a look, there's lots of different controls there, especially with and without the ball. Transforming the ball, lots of different tips here to get you started. Also we've got Risky Woods. This obviously started off life as an Amiga title. It'll be quite obvious once you start playing it that it does feel like a home computer game too. There's a few pages on that game as well. This game is rock solid hard, so be wary. We've also got the sort of sequel, so to speak, for Zero Tolerance Underground. This was released fairly recently. If you bought the Zero Tolerance game on Xbox, PlayStation or whatever, you got this game included for free, which was basically an unreleased sequel, so to speak, from way back in the day. And it's obviously another first-person shooter for Evercade, and it was still the Mega Drive version, which is pretty cool. It's basically more of the same, to be honest, which is not a bad thing because the first game was pretty good. And we've also got Street Racer, which is a kind of a Mario Kart style title. This is the SNES version, I believe, that was released in loads of different formats. We got the NES version of Target Renegade. Sadly not the Spectrum version, but anyway, it's here if you like your sort of brawling shoot-em-ups, brawling beat-em-ups. Got Skuljagger, Revolt of the Westigans. This is a platforming kind of slash-em-up style thing. And interesting, we've got a few different moves there. Not sure what's going on. It's a kind of a weird style game. Bad Street Brawler, which is another scrolling sort of beat 'em up. This was designed for the Power Glove, if anyone ever remembers that. One of only 2 games that was designed for that. It is pretty basic. It is what it is, it's not amazing. We've also got a puzzle style game, Mermaids of Atlantis. A little bit like Puzzle Bobble meets Columns sort of thing, though the bubbles obviously go up the way. It's a little bit different and at times a little bit hard to get your head round. And this game began as a naughty, unlicensed title, but was later made family friendly. So I think the mermaids were basically topless. It was obviously a little bit adult orientated, but yeah, probably pretty tame by these days comparison. It'd be nice if we could unlock that version, I guess, but I'm not going to hold up any hopes for that happening. We've also got a sort of Star Fox style game entitled Star Fox. This is a Game Boy Advance title. This isn't bad at all. Pretty tough right enough, but pretty decent. I think if you like Star Fox, you will enjoy this. And lastly, and probably leastly, is the Fidgetts. This is a Game Boy style puzzle platforming game, which doesn't really hold up very well at all. It's pretty tough. And the worst part is probably the time, which we'll go into more detail in the actual video. So what I'm going to do now is try it on the XP, more specifically just looking at Glover, how it performs, the graphics. We'll also look at the Super Pocket and the original Evercade, just to make sure that it actually plays on those devices. Okay, so first off we'll have a look at the EXP, and I think we're just going to concentrate on Glover. That's the one that sort of intrigues me the most, at how it's going to actually perform on the handheld devices. I think the first thing that definitely you notice is that it takes a little while to actually load. Much like the PlayStation titles that's on the handhelds especially, and even the VS, it takes a long time to actually load. Not sure why, but it's obviously going through some sort of security checks to get started, but bear with it, it does actually eventually load. So it's quite nice that it's obviously a modified version that we have of Glover. It's been modified and worked on by, is it Byte Swap Labs in conjunction with Blaze. Obviously they had to remap a lot of the controls. They've done a lot of changes to things. They've added KD into the game, and obviously they've changed the graphics slightly. I think we've lost the smoothing. See, things look a little bit sort of jaggy, so to speak. You can see the jaggies more clearly on this device, but you can see it does play pretty well. Haven't noticed any massive issues. They've obviously done a fantastic job of modifying the game to work on the Evercades. I'm actually quite impressed at how well they've done here. And there's no slowdown. Graphically it looks fine, yeah, apart from the fact it does look a little bit more jaggy. Doesn't necessarily look like an N64 title as such. If anyone played the N64 games originally, they were obviously a lot more smoother. You could tell you were playing a N64 game. And there's obviously KD makes his appearance in the game as well, which is pretty cool. You can get all the tips from KD. With KD Says, they basically replaced the help that was there before, which is a nice touch throughout the game. I think that's cool. Then you'll definitely know that you are playing the Evercade version of Glover. So nice touch. They've obviously done a lot of good work here. But let's check the other devices before we jump onto the VS. It does still take quite a while to load on this device as well. It's no different to the EXP, to be honest. So here we have it on the original, and it seems to be absolutely fine. You could almost say arguably the graphics look more like N64 because obviously the resolution is a lot lower. You probably don't notice the jaggies quite as much on the original Evercade than you do on the EXP due to the, I guess, the lower resolution. So you could arguably say that it probably even looks better on the original Evercade. But happy to report that it does play absolutely fine on the original Evercade. So that's pretty impressive, I think, in my book. They've obviously done some kind of magic trickery to get this game running on the devices. I'd certainly like to see a little bit more details on how the heck they've managed to do this. Pretty impressive. I'm happy to say that it actually runs a lot quicker on, or at least loads quicker on the Super Pocket than it does on the other handheld devices, and you could probably arguably say that graphically it looks best on the Super Pocket. The sort of, if you look at the 4350 and the sort of score in the top corner here, those seem to pop a little bit more on this device than it does on the EXP, and there's probably maybe a little bit less noticeable jaggies, I guess. But it still looks really nice. I think arguably this probably is the best looking of all the three handhelds. But yeah, you might disagree with that, but I think it does look best on here. If you were wondering if it works on the Super Pocket, it runs absolutely fine. Obviously this has been upgraded to the latest firmware, so not sure how it would work if it wasn't upgraded or not, but all I can say is it does run absolutely fine. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do now is get onto the VS, play through all the games on this collection, and then I'll give you my opinions as we go. Is it worth buying? Let's have a look. Okay, so first up is Bad Street Brawler. Now bear with it, this isn't a good start to the collection, but it does actually improve quite significantly. Now this is the game that was designed for the Power Glove controller. One of two games apparently. Now that probably tells you all about the Power controller, the fact that it probably didn't last. Never got the chance to actually play one or even see one. But this game itself for the Power Glove is pretty awful. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, pretty basic. You can actually walk from one screen to the other, from left to right, without really bothering fighting every enemy. Now you can if you want, but it's absolutely pointless. Just keep scrolling till you get to the end, and the enemies will disappear and a mid-screen boss will appear. Keep going to the end, another boss, and then you get to the end boss. You can basically just ignore everything in between. It's absolutely pointless. If you do try and fight everything, you'll probably lose a lot of health. And you'll probably not even complete the levels, but it really is that silly. It makes absolutely no sense. It's very, very basic. I'm sure folks out there will actually enjoy this. Personally, I think it's going to be up there in one of the worst games you'll probably play on Evercade, and sadly we have a few of them. It definitely makes me think that Blaze deliberately targets certain types of games. Now there's no doubt about it, this is an iconic game because of the Power Glove, the fact that it was meant for that device, so there could be reasons behind some of the games that they actually choose. So I'll maybe give them that one. It makes sense, it's got some historic value I guess, but it's certainly a very poor game and not one that I really enjoyed. I mean, it's not the worst game I'll ever play, but it's certainly not going to be up there in the best, and sadly it will go down as one of the worst games you'll play on Evercade. Okay, so moving on to Glover. This is quite clearly the cover star and probably the main attraction for this collection. Blaze certainly have done some wonders with this game and getting it to actually run. and it was obviously made by the Oliver twins, who are probably more famous for the Dizzy games that we got on the home computers, but they did make quite a few other games beside that. I think they made some for the Wii as well, and they obviously made this one, Glover, which was also released on the PlayStation. I definitely expected to get that version, but pretty good we're getting the N64 version, albeit with a little bit of changes to it. There's all the controls, certainly quite important. You'll need to pay attention to that too. Use the shoulder buttons to manipulate the camera and a few other things besides. There are some tutorials if you want to get stuck in. There's some practice as well. But it's pretty cool to see these logo screens with Blaze's name on it, Piko Interactive, and obviously ByteSwap Labs, who obviously helped develop the changes that were required to get this game to work on Evercade, which is probably no mean feat. Now, there's no doubt about it, they've made some changes. They've probably dumbed down the graphics a little bit, or maybe took away the smoothing, which you would probably associate with N64 games. Now, sadly, obviously, that means we're going to see a lot more polygons maybe stick out a little bit, and you're definitely going to see jaggies. If you're playing on a bigger screen or a TV monitor, the jaggies definitely pop out, and the game is a little bit blocky. Not so bad on the smaller devices, but on TVs, you'll definitely notice it. I'm pretty impressed this actually runs at all. But anyway, here's the intro. I'll jump in after it. Okay, so once you get to the start of the game, I would probably take your time and familiarise yourself with the controls. There's a lot of different things you can do with the ball, the character, without the ball, that type of thing. Now, as I said earlier, KD makes his appearance instead of the sort of tipster that was there before, and it gives you hints and what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go, the controls, all that sort of thing. So use that to your advantage in figuring out the controls. Yep, the B button, basically hold that down, it points you to where the ball is. And the idea is to try and, I think there's 3 or 4 balls you need to try and sort of guide through the levels. You can't go without the ball, you need that ball and try and guide it to the end of each level, and then you can maybe get the crystals back, I guess. I think that's basically the story, but yeah, please spend time familiarising yourself with the controls, because they certainly are very tricky, especially on the D-pad. I think they've done well to actually get it working on the D-pad, because I think ideally you would probably want to play this on an analog controller, but happy to say working on the D-pad was absolutely fine. I didn't really have massive issues. It certainly wasn't perfect, but I thought it was okay. They've certainly done a good job with the remapping all the controls and getting it to work fine on the D-pad, so no problems there, happily to report. Graphically, everything is pretty much fine. I spotted a few sort of polygon issues here and there, but it was nothing major. Emulation wise looks good. You can see there's some maybe tearing in the polygons here and there. Definitely those jaggies pop out the bigger screen you play on, but on the smaller devices you probably won't notice it as much, and maybe that's the best way to actually play it. But this is basically the main screen. You've got your different levels to choose. You can't go into the later levels as yet. You basically need to start at the first level. Which is, I guess, something of a tutorial. Now, all the bad guys you need to destroy, you need to collect those cards that you see with the stars on them. I think what they call Garibos or something like that. You can collect them, if you collect them faster, basically you get more points, but I'm not really sure with the point of getting more points. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Basically, try and collect all the cards, guide that ball to the exit. Now, obviously on the ball, especially in the water, trying to control Glover is really, really tough. It takes a little bit of getting used to. Just mind, when you're in the water with the ball, the controls are pretty much reversed. Now, that's just physics, that's just how it would happen in reality, but obviously in the game, ideally, I wouldn't like to see that, but that's just how it is. That's just reality for you. But it does take a little while to get your head around. Now, all these bad guys you probably can destroy. I'm not sure how to destroy this one, but you can change the sort of style of ball you've got as well to like a bowling ball, a crystal, and some other things. I can't really remember what they all are, but throughout the game, you'll probably have to use all of these to your advantage to destroy some enemies. You can also jump and slam down at the same time to destroy some of the sort of smaller enemies, which makes it a little bit easier. So there's no doubt the camera angles are always going to be a pain in these type of games. They were a pain back in the day, and they still are a pain in this game. You utilise the shoulder buttons to sort of manoeuvre the camera around to suit yourself. I think the L2 or R2 button, you can zoom in or zoom out depending on what you actually prefer on where you are on the map. But personally, I actually think this game is pretty decent. I probably enjoy playing this game a lot more than I did 40 Winks. I think it's a better game than 40 Winks. It's definitely got a slightly more polished feel. Yes, it's not perfect, but once you get used to the controls and obviously how the ball and Glover work together, I think you'll find this is a really cool game. And gladly it is better than the PlayStation version that's out there. It's definitely a little bit more enjoyable. And I have to say that I think Blaze have done an amazing job to get this game to work on all the Evercade devices. I'd definitely like to know more on how they actually achieved it, because I think it would be absolutely fascinating. So hats off to them. Obviously we spend a lot of time sort of digging into them and telling them such a bad job that they're doing with firmware updates and stuff, but I think we have to take our hats off and say, well done Blaze, you've done a fantastic job to get this working on Evercade. Maybe we'll see some more N64 games in the future. If you've done such a great job with this, there's no reason why we couldn't see more similar style games. I'm sure it was not easy, but they've done an amazing job, so well done guys. I really enjoy this one. Excellent stuff. Okay, so moving on to Mermaids of Atlantis. Now, I realise, obviously, I spent a long time with Glover there. That was deliberately so, because I think it deserved a little bit of spotlight and obviously a little bit more gameplay, so that you guys can see the decent job that Blaze have done. It really is excellent stuff. But anyway, on to Mermaids of Atlantis. And obviously this game was, I think it was Beach Babes something, that was basically a naughtier version, and this is basically a tidier version. There's no sort of adult material, so to speak, in it, but it was pretty tame. It wasn't anything exciting, I guess. But I'm sure if you get excited with that, that's fair enough. But anyway, this is basically a puzzle-style game, maybe like a mix of puzzle bobble, columns, Tetris, that type of thing. It does take a little bit to get used to. We understand the physics. Obviously the bubbles are floating up the way, and you can't leave gaps because that creates a bubble, and you're just really trying to match up. I think it's 4 or more, and the initial stages you're trying to create or get rid of 200 bubbles, and then it just keeps progressing through the games. You can collect the letters magic, then activate that on, I think it's the B button and down, and that will basically maybe clear some of the colours on the board, something like that. But once you get your head around the actual basics of the game and understand how it actually works, I actually really enjoyed it, and it actually surprised me because I didn't expect to enjoy it. Initially I thought this is just a bit weird, wasn't getting my head around it, but finally I did, and I quite enjoyed playing it. It was quite a relaxing experience, and if you like your puzzle games like Puzzle Bobble, I'm pretty sure you will enjoy this as well. Okay, next up it's Risky Woods, and this is basically a side-scrolling sort of slashing shoot 'em up type of thing, sort of platformy style game in the vein of Myth. Anyone played that game, you might know what to expect. There's a few other games that remind me of, but most of them were probably on the Amiga, and it's pretty good once you get your head around the game. And obviously get used to the frustrations that you will experience while playing this game. I'm pretty sure you will enjoy it. You're going to have to spam those save states. Now the sound bites that came on this screen here, obviously it says Electronic Arts Sega for some reason, but the sound that was used there, immediately I thought Turbo Challenge on the Mega Drive, but anyway, it sounded very similar. But this game, Risky Woods, it's okay. It does have a lot of frustrations. It is very, very tough. It reminds me a little bit like Myth, or even maybe a bit like Ghouls and Ghosts and that type of thing, because basically those enemies just keep respawning. There are chests and pick 'em ups, but sometimes it's not clear what they do. You could pick up one and you will lose a lot of time off the clock, which is another frustration, because this is timed. You will probably run out of time more than anything else, and those enemies just keep on coming at you, and it does get really, really frustrating. Sometimes I felt that when I was pressing the jump button at the end of the platforms, it wasn't jumping, or the timing wasn't quite right. So there's a lot of frustrations in this game, although I did actually enjoy the game to a point. Just got very frustrated with all the irritations that are definitely within the game. Now you're supposed to collect these wheels. I think there's 2 or 4 each stage. You collect 2 and then you create some kind of music pattern throughout the game, which then unlocks the next stage of that level, which is a little bit weird. Anyway, that's basically it. You go through each of these stages doing that. Constant respawning enemies, which is so frustrating. So sometimes there's not a lot of point in hanging about. Just try your best to keep moving. And yes, trying to time those jumps is unbelievably frustrating. But I guess if you don't mind the frustration, there is a decent game here, but it has a lot of problems. It has a lot of flaws. So have a little bit of patience. You might actually enjoy it. To everyone else, you might not enjoy this, you probably not want to play it at all, but it's pretty nice. The graphics are fantastic, the sound's really nice, so it's a decent enough game, but probably not my most favourite game from this collection. I preferred quite a few others from, but don't get me wrong, it is pretty decent, just unbelievably tough. Okay, next up is one of those games you've probably never heard of before. This is Skuljagger, Revolt of the Westicans, and it's another game a bit like Risky Woods. It's a sort of scrolling, sort of platforming, slash 'em up style game. It's actually not too bad at all, albeit it is very strange, has its own sort of issues as well, and I think this is a SNES version, given the fact that there's shoulder buttons in use there as well. It had to be SNES and not a Mega Drive version. But yeah, so you basically start off, you've got your sword, trusty sword, and there's gems that you collect throughout the game. Now I'm pretty sure the gems are sort of health points. Now the red ones that you pick up, as you can see, basically fire out the end of your sword and sort of create some sort of a attacking form, whereas the green ones I think act as your health. So basically make sure you have some of these green ones on hand. The more you have, the more hits you can take from the enemies. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense at times, though. It was a little bit confusing. I just sort of worked out that ideally try and make sure you've got these gems in place, especially the green ones. Otherwise, if you take a hit, you will die instantly and it'll be basically back to a checkpoint or game over completely. Those sort of fruit you collect, you can create bubbles from, which I've never quite figured out yet. By, I think, pressing the B button, you create a kind of a bubble. I'm not sure what's going on. It really is bizarre. But I played it for quite a bit and actually quite enjoyed it once I got my head around it. Although eventually I got to the boss at the end of the first sort of stage and got completely stuck. So I definitely need to spend more time with it. But it is actually better than I expected. My initial playthrough some months ago, it was one of those games I probably sort of dismissed and thought it was pretty awful. But I think the more you play it, the more you probably enjoy it. Take your time and understand the mechanics and what to actually do. It's not too bad at all. Okay, so on to Star X. Now this one could be something of a hidden gem. Clearly it is very much based on Star Fox from the Super Nintendo and all the other versions that came with it. But this is actually pretty impressive. Actually quite enjoyed it, and it's one that I guess, like Skuljagger, never heard of it. It's come out the blue, a complete hidden gem for me, and actually enjoyed it. The graphics are obviously they're polygonal style graphics in the shape of Star Fox, but this is really quite impressive. But don't forget to save up those sort of homing missiles. I think you press the select button for the homing missile or nuclear bomb, whatever it is. Save them up for the bosses at the end of the stage, and then you can just spam that button by pressing select and you will basically destroy them. But obviously bear in mind here, it says A for select on that screen there, it's actually B for select, so the buttons have been swapped as per usual with these type of games on Evercade. Although I think there was a reason for it, even though it would be great to actually have the buttons the correct way around so that they match what you see on the screen. I think actually using the B button and obviously being able to touch those shoulder buttons on the controller makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to let Blaze off with this one. Having the buttons mapped to B for shoot makes more sense. Rather than A, it's probably a little bit more awkward. But again, it's just a little bit frustrating when you see press A for select, B to go back, and it's basically switched about on the screen. Pretty much typical for every other game that you've got on Evercade for Game Boy Advance and I think NES games in general. It's just always button switching. But anyway, it does make sense, so I'm going to let them off. This is a very decent game, and might possibly be my maybe second or third favourite game from this collection. It is really good fun to play through. It is a blast. Just remember to pick up those health throughout the level or you won't last, and save those homing missiles for the end bosses. The second or sort of bonus stages by clearing sort of mines is amazingly good fun as well. Given the fact it's basically a square and you can actually turn around a circle, that is quite impressive feat for me for this sort of 16-bit machine that we're obviously playing this one. But great game, hidden gem, fantastic stuff. Okay, moving on to Street Racer. This is clearly a Mario Kart meets Street Fighter style game, and it's actually amazing stuff. Look at the tip there. Obviously you can unlock some extra levels in the custom setup, which is pretty cool. There's a couple of KD says here that opens up a few different bonuses, so pay attention to that. You can obviously get some extra stuff out of your games. Now, Street Racer, this is the SNES version that we've got. There was loads of different versions of this game. There was even a PlayStation version, Mega Drive version. I'm not sure which one is the best one. I'm sure I've played quite a few of them, but I can't really remember. This version we have is really decent, there's no doubt about it, but you will probably struggle in the first level or so. Take your time. I think the first time I played it I finished last, and then the second time I finished last again, but have a little bit of practice, understand the mechanics of the game, and you will definitely make progress, so have a little bit of patience. I found that some of the characters were probably not ideal to be playing. Probably best going either this character here, Suzuki, or the sort of girl character. I felt they had the best sort of acceleration and speed that was maybe on average the best overall to use, but that's just my personal preference. It probably doesn't matter really which one you go. Try and time that start perfectly as well and you'll get a better start. If you start badly, you'll probably find yourself going backwards, and it's probably better to just give up and start again. I think you have 3 lives per level, or overall I'm not entirely sure. There's about 6 races per cup, something like that, and there's a good bit of variety between the levels. The graphics are really nice, but yeah, you'll probably struggle initially when you actually play it, and eventually once it clicks you'll find yourself maybe finishing second, third, and even probably actually winning the races. But yeah, don't forget you can go backwards, I'm sure, once you get frustrated. The temptation is always there to actually go backwards. Pointless, but it's a bit of fun at the end of the day. It was probably always better doing that in the Formula 1 games, when you probably crashed or made a complete mess of it and just decide to go backwards just for the heck of it. Anyway guys, a decent game, and it's obviously a Mario Kart clone, and you can play it 2-player as well on the VS, albeit as sort of on the same screen. But excellent game, I really like this one, it's good fun. Okay, on to Target Renegade. This is another sort of fighting game or scrolling beat 'em up, whichever term you want to actually use. Interesting sort of details there, saying this was probably one of the first beat 'em ups made. Not sure if that's true, but that's interesting enough. I guess it's Renegade that was the initial first ever beat 'em up. This is Target Renegade, the NES version. Now, ideally, I think the better version was Spectrum. Maybe one day we will get a Spectrum collection on Evercade. Not sure why we don't yet, but for whatever reason we don't. But anyway, we have to make do with what we have, and this is the NES version. It's not great, it's not awful, it's really just one of those kind of average beat 'em ups. I guess if you like your Double Dragons, this basically just reminded me a little bit like that. Very repetitive though, the controls are a little bit stiff at times, I felt. You basically got punch and kick, you need to do a sort of jump kick to take out these biker guys. I definitely struggled a little bit, got to the side end of the first stage and the boss and then struggled. You definitely need to look after your health. You only have one life and one health bar. There are pick 'em ups obviously throughout the game, so don't miss them or you will struggle. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's just very, very average and very repetitive sadly. But it's okay, it's worth a quick bash. Okay, so on to another game you've probably never heard of. This is the Fidgetts. This is a Game Boy style game, and this one gave me problems. Basically, you have to guide the two characters from one end of the level to the other, utilising whichever way you possibly can. There's one can only jump a little bit higher, one is obviously shorter, and you need to help them through the levels. That's basically it, but the big problem with this game is the time factor. Trying to complete this in the time given is almost impossible. And the game certainly lives up to its name. It is very fidgety. Not sure if that's an English word, it's certainly a Scottish word that I would use quite a lot, and it's frustrating as heck. But that's not really the big issue. Again, like I said, all the levels are completely timed, and I have no idea how to actually complete some of these levels in the time given. It seems completely impossible. Maybe I need to spend a lot more time with it, but I don't think the game is good enough to actually warrant spending all that time with it. If you like this game, fair enough, but for me, I don't think there's any reason to want to play this game any longer than a few minutes. You'll get very frustrated and you'll shake your head at saying, how the heck can you complete this in this time frame? Unbelievably, completely impossible. Which is a shame. I'm pretty sure the game would be okay without that time limit, but with it, it's horrible. Okay, on to the final game. It's Zero Tolerance Underground, and this was an unreleased sequel to Zero Tolerance, which was on Piko Collection 3. A very decent first-person shooter from the Mega Drive. Yep, the Mega Drive didn't really have a lot of first-person shooters, probably maybe 2 or 3 at best, and this would have been one, but it was unreleased. It was released on the package that you got with the special editions released on the Xbox and PlayStation very recently, so you might have played this before. Otherwise, this might be new to you. It is very similar to the first game. It's basically more of the same. You can actually basically just clear the enemies on each level, then make your way through each stage. It obviously gets progressively harder, you get less ammo, it does get pretty tough. Now, one thing I definitely want to make clear here is the control method seems to be different from the original game. I would recommend to get into the game controls and change that to retro style so that you can move with the D-pad. Otherwise, you need to sort of use the A and C button or A and B button on the Evercade controller to turn round the character, and it doesn't seem to work very well that way. Not sure why Blaze left it like that, but basically you can change it in the actual in-game setup, so I would highly recommend that if you want to have the same controls as the first game. Now, this is basically the opening screen where you have access to all the levels. I wouldn't bother going down to the second level at this point because you will get destroyed. You don't have enough ammo, so the best way to do it is familiarise yourself with the game again, clear all the enemies. You can see on the left hand side of the screen you've got a count of how many enemies are on this level, which is 34, now 33. On the right hand side of the screen is your health bar. Keep an eye on that as well, and obviously at the top side of the screen there you've got all your different weapons and different equipment that you have. Scroll through that using, I think it's either you can have the shoulder buttons or I think it's the Y button, something like that. But anyway, really decent game. I enjoyed the first one, albeit it is quite hard at times, so utilise those save states at all times. Take your time. The enemies do appear quite rapidly on the screen, and somehow they actually go so fast they end up behind you all the time. But keep an eye on your map as well. Obviously those red dots will appear and you'll know exactly where they are. But very decent game. Glad it's on the Evercade. I really enjoy it. Might be my second or third favourite game from this collection, and it's definitely one I'll be coming back to more.
Laser aim gun collected. Laser aim gun collected. Zero enemy remaining. Laser aim gun collected. Proceed to next level. Entering level 2. Medipack collected. Critical.
Okay guys, my final thoughts on Piko Collection 4 for Evercade. I think it's a return to form, to be honest. It's far better than Piko Interactive Collection 3 and 2. 3 I thought was a real disappointment, and 1 I've not actually played an awful lot of. And I know there was a lot of people who had the same opinion. So if you were holding off buying Collection 4 based on that, I would say please don't. This is far better than Collection 3. Much more enjoyable. I think overall it's a better package, better games. Yeah, there's a couple there that are not the best, but I guess we get that with pretty much every cart these days. But I think overall, excellent collection of games. Really enjoy it. It's one I'm going to come back to and keep playing, especially Glover. I think Glover is really cool, and Blaze have done an amazing job getting this to run on all the Evercade devices. So hats off to them, well done. Overall, a very decent cart, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you didn't like 3 and you were obviously holding back. Don't hold back, go out and get it, it's really good.